Howdy, YouTube. This is an after the fact review of an older game I'm just getting around to. Today, we are talking about Spider Man Remastered, and you're watching raw gameplay as we speak about it. This game originally came out for PlayStation. I secured my copy via Steam on PC, and it has been heralded as one of the greatest superhero games ever, contending with the likes of Batman, Arkham franchise. And while I think this game obviously pulls a lot from that series in terms of gameplay, the story for this one is lacking. I know I'm not enjoying a game when I start to get antsy and say to myself, okay, where's the ending? I didn't quite reach that point with Spider Man, but I must say the first 50% of the main storyline in this game is pretty mundane. I began wondering when the action was going to pick up, and I honestly kept tracking the story progress percentage in the lower right hand corner of the map. At about 50%, the game starts to move a little bit, and it isn't until 80% completion that I said, finally, this is the game that I was expecting. Now, you can chalk that up to years of gestating hype, but if you look back at the story in Spider Man, you fight maybe three or four bosses in that first 50%, and only one of them is relevant, the Kingpin. Unfortunately, he's literally the first fight that you have, so it's clunky. You don't know the controls real well. You're scrambling through buttons and tips while you fight him. Aside from that, the other characters you fight throughout the rest of the game are C list and D list villains. Until the end, that is. The only thing that kept me semi invested in this story was the thread between Dr. Octavius and Norman Osborn. They build up their feud rather well, and it may be a slow burn, but the payoff is worth it. That's where I think a lot of the praise for this game comes from. Like I said, the ending 20% of this game is great in terms of story. It's the last thing you do, and because of that, it's the freshest in your mind. They forget the beginning 80% that is rather repetitive and lackluster. Fighting super villains like Shocker and Tombstone, these are nobodies. Hell, even most people don't know who Mr. Negative is unless you are truly invested in the comics. So stringing us along with these characters is rather disappointing. To beat a horse while it's down a bit, the boss battles are extremely repetitive. Shoot your web shooters until they are stun locked, punch them three or four times, back away, rinse, repeat. Every boss battle is the same. Now, you can say that about the original Arkham Asylum as well, which is one of its biggest criticisms, but at least in that game, you had a little bit of variation with the Poison Ivy and Scarecrow battles. And you were fighting supervillains that have weight behind their names. And those web shooters that you're using, they are the web shooters that you get at the start of the game. As you progress and unlock new tech, they don't even implement them into the boss battles. It's just a cookie cutter copy paste for every encounter. Speaking of cookie cutter, the random encounters are monotonous. There's maybe three or four variations, and the cinematic aspects of the car chases have two outcomes, I want to say. After doing these activities for a couple of sections of New York, you're pretty much done with them unless you're a completionist. Spider Man is an open world game, but things are rolled out in a linear fashion. For instance, you complete a main mission, then a bunch of side quests and missions and activities will pop up. You don't stumble upon things naturally like you do in the Arkham games. Case in point, in Arkham Knight, when you would randomly be gliding throughout the city, Man Bat would pop over a roof, then you'd give chase. It's fluid, it's natural, it's random. Here, you complete a mission, clean up the activities, complete a mission, clean up the activities, and they pigeonhole you into going through the game step by step rather than giving you carte blanche and the freedom to stumble upon events within the world. It's very odd for an open world game. Adding to the frustration of this title are unnecessary story beats. The MJ sequences are insufferable. They make her a Mary Sue in this title to the point that not only is she an amazing journalist, but she is sneaking around gangsters, tasing guards, jumping off rooftops, and being an all around daredevil. Aside from that, she also has a one up on Pete during conversations. She always has the moral high ground, and Pete is constantly being put down by her. There's actually a section of the game where she is captured, surrounded by guards. Spider Man swings in to start stealthily taking out the opposition, which gives her a chance to leave, but she decides to stay and help Spider Man. Really? This is over the top. She's a normal human, and Spider Man is a superhero. Let the superhero do superhero things. In parallel with the Mary Jane sections are Miles Morales sections. Now, I'm going to be frank with you, I don't like Miles Morales as a character, and the sales of his comics prove that he is a failed concept. That aside, the moments where you play as Miles in the game are vapid. You literally walk or sneak around as him and don't actually do anything of importance. I'd rather not have him in the game at all, but if it is pivotal to the story, then either make his gameplay sections robust or just leave him in the cutscenes. I know they made a spin off game with him, and he is heavily in the second game, but this is honestly a character that should be left alone or used within his own titles. Into the Spider Verse was a great movie. I actually laughed a lot during it and enjoyed my time with it. But as it stands in my mind, Peter Parker is Spider Man. No ifs, ands, or buts. You can race swap and gender swap all you want. Hell, they've made every character in the Spider Man franchise a Spider Man or a Spider Woman at some point, and it's nonsensical. If you want strong characters, create new ones. Don't steal the title of an established character and just race or gender swap them. They should have unique powers and abilities and not just copy the success of established heroes. It's a disservice to that character. When you finally complete the game, you can swing over to the DLC, and I recommend that you do. The story here is actually more engaging than the story within the main game. It's three parts, and unfortunately, it isn't integrated into the main map, so you have to constantly back out to a separate menu and access the DLC through that menu, but it follows Black Cat and then Hammerhead primarily. The storyline follows the events of the main game, so you can't really play it without beating the main story, but the core story between the gangs and Black Cat should have definitely been side quests within the main game. That would have bolstered the story within the main story and given us some more twists and emotional roller coasters instead of the forgettable swinging that we got. The boss battle in here actually is pretty good too. You have some variation and you don't just web him up and punch him, which is a great change of pace. Look, overall, the game is a bit of a slog to get through, but the ending payoff is good. If the ending 20% and the DLC would have been how the whole game played out, this would have been an easy 10. But while swinging through New York is fun and all, the tempo is way off. This one, I'm going to give a 7 out of 10. I'm glad I played it, and I would potentially jump back in and play it again if I'm itching for that Spider Man fix. This is an after effect, though. I've shown you raw gameplay, told you guys my thoughts, and now I'm moving on to the next title. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Did you enjoy Spider Man? Do you remember it differently than how I described it? Was I too harsh? Tell me in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.